In attempting to throw light on some of the problems which cause anxiety to modern man, one must first decide to whom to address oneself. What with professional prejudice and educational bias, there are so many differences of culture and belief, such multiplicity of opinions and such divergent lines of approach, that it seems hard to find any common language. Aside from the great mass whose interests are limited to material cares and personal ambitions, many people today are troubled by a thirst for knowledge concerning the essential problems of life, or by the fact that their deepest aspirations remain unsatisfied. Both these anxieties are the result of uncertainty. The way is uncertain because the goal is uncertain. In either case, the solution would seem to lie in knowledge of the laws which condition life on earth and define its aim. The danger is that any such teaching would be taken for dogma and have its advocates and opponents, unless, of course, one could provide the proof of it. But the proof can only be found by individual experience. One is tempted, therefore, to offer the answer to an elite only. But how is the elite to be selected? An elite is always selected in relation to an aim. If your aim is the control of nations, then your elite will consist of military and economic magnates, and the directors of political policy. If the aim is to create a racial aristocracy, then the members will be chosen for their physical and intellectual prowess. If the aim is to attain the highest destiny of humanity, then the elite will be selected for the qualities required by that aim. This highest destiny has been exemplified in history by the appearance from time to time, in different races and civilizations, of certain great ones who have attained the highest point of human development. Their achievement may be regarded as fabulous or godlike, yet why did they appear to offer us the example of a suprahuman kingdom, or conditions as a possible aim? We think so much of progress in the sciences, of the wonderful power of mathematical thought, of discoveries in machinery and biology, that we have lost sight of the only kind of progress which is of value for the essential aim of man, namely the proof that his existence is eternal, that his development continues even after the death of the body, and that he possesses faculties which enable him to discover spiritual reality and discern the relationship of the realities of the senses to this higher reality. His power of thought may fill the intellectual man with pride and cloud the vision of his true destiny, but reality will take its revenge when some fortuitous development makes nonsense of the most artful deductions of professors, politicians, and psychologists. And its last revenge is taken at the moment of death, when the dying man, forced to abandon everything he has lived for, may well ask what he has profited by it all. Whether or not believing in survival, a man does feel the need for some continuation to justify his struggles and atone for his disappointments. But the belief in an afterlife, which can begin in this very existence by the attainment in some slight degree of that transcendent state which the sages have called the realm of the suprahuman. This belief is often rejected only out of a false timidity. Man would sooner die in the dreary belief of having wasted one's life than encounter the superior smile of the skeptic. Others have been attracted by techniques for acquiring what are called magic or psychic powers, which produce abnormal phenomena in the lower levels of life or matter, abnormal physical, emotional, or mental states. But in this, there is nothing of the suprahuman. The suprahuman realm is a state in which spiritual awareness predominates over psychological awareness of the lower levels, and where the universal prevails over the particular. The sages who speak of it condemn as serious obstacles the multiplicity of desires and complicated notions. They do not speak of magical powers, but of the inherent abilities of the spirit when controlling matter. And they do not speak of willpower as a means to produce phenomena, but of the absence of violence, egoism, and hatred. For without these, our human and animal aggressiveness would no longer be dangerous. Each in his own language speaks of those elect beings who have acquired the qualities needed for entering on the superhuman realm, those who have been called, and those who have actually attained it, the elect. Whether we study the Gospels, or Lao Tse, or the Egyptian masters, we are told that the kingdom of heaven, the Tao, the path of Ma'at, is to be found within us, which amounts to saying that the election or selection of the elite is decided within ourselves, according to how we shrink from or obey our higher impulses. No sage has ever regarded as particularly fortunate those famous for their knowledge or power, and even less the learned doctors of the law. Unanimously, they agree in attributing membership of the elite to those who have rediscovered in maturity of their adult human consciousness the simplicity of a child. From what has been said, we could define the elite of humanity at present as consisting of those who have at least begun to become aware and critical of the present state of their consciousness, who are not satisfied with their animal humanity and aspire to something higher. The choice is thus already very limited, for even among those who are considered cultured, how few have any effective notion of the distinction between the human and the suprahuman. Many will not discover the difference until they are already upon the path, so this we cannot use as a basis for defining the elite, and such classification will be of little interest to those who have in them already the germ of the qualities required. The definition, in fact, is only of value if we have to correct a wrong judgment of the nature of that progress, which enables humanity to rise to the superhuman state. What matters is not to apply a definition, but to observe the characteristic signs of a disposition, allotted by destiny or achieved by effort. Among such symptoms are the tendency to sympathize with the suffering of others, not in the sense of pity, but by opening the heart so that its radiation, without selection or discrimination, acts by itself as a balm of impersonal healing. Other signs are material and spiritual generosity, as opposed to avarice and envy, the feeling or awareness of solidarity, an effective sense of responsibility, and the acceptance of all that makes for simplicity of thought and feeling, looking at all times for the essential point, and rejecting perfunctory opinions and fashionable prejudices. Among the signs we must even include the sense of excess, so long as its motive is not greed for sensual pleasure. For on any higher level it expresses a need to escape our natural and conventional limitations, to pass beyond the precarious human state and touch, even if only for a moment, the superhuman state. Since nature cannot tolerate excess, this tendency can only be explained as an instinctive desire to transcend the limits of nature. So if one's motive is not any selfish interest or pleasure, then only guidance is necessary, and one will attain the goal, provided one has the heroic courage which is prepared to break the bounds of security in order to reach the infinite. There can be no question, then, of defining the elite as a chosen body of the persons privileged by culture, abilities, or knowledge. It will be composed of those who are searching by every possible means to make contact with, quote, that which cannot die, in themselves and in the universe. Of those who feel themselves the heirs not of their earthly ancestors, but of those beings who have already reached the stage of living incorruptible ones. Yet the predisposition to this way is not always conscious in those who have it. Often the only evidence of it is an indefinable hunger that no human satisfaction can assuage. But once this tendency is clearly brought to light, the thoughtful man will recognize that it answers the demand of his heart, and by becoming conscious of it, he becomes a member of the elite, and this makes him immediately sensitive to the sufferings of others. For the cause of these sufferings is egocentricity, which makes a man impervious to the vitalizing fire of the world, by wrapping him in that hard shell by which men cut themselves off from one another, like cells in a condition of sclerosis. When such people attempt to acquire wisdom, or mastery, or powers, their efforts only increase the thickness of their shell and the inflation of their ego. They may form a terrestrial elite, but they have no point of contact with the suprahuman realm, where personal shells are broken and knowledge is the fruit of communion with that which is. The distance between these two paths can be measured by saying that at their beginning there may be no more space between them than the thickness of a razor's edge, but their ends are as far apart as the earth's crust and the sun that warms it. The kingdom of heaven, that is, of the suprahuman, is liberation from the human by expanding beyond the limits of the personality. The powers thus attained are the miracles wrought by non-resistance and impersonal love. The firmament of the kingdom, its elite, is constituted by the simple in heart and thought.